He captured our attention. One has to do with the NATO alliance deliberating over here this week on its relationship with the Soviet bloc, now that the Cold War appears to be in remission. This is a man who has enormous consideration for his fellow man, and yet for whom the Cold War has been essential. He is a stunning writer, and he has done it again.
But the spy story was not invented by the Cold War. It will survive the Cold War. As long as the nation state exists, there will be spies. There will be intelligence targets.
If we had heard this week that one David Cornwell had published a new book, we cannot imagine a stampede at the bookstores. But David Cornwell has always written under the name John le Carré. And when le Carré produces a new book, that is reason for celebration. Incidentally, he is never called le Carré by friends and colleagues, always Cornwell, usually David. Once again, the man who is master of the spy novel has chosen as his backdrop the competition between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. The new book is called Russia House.
Before his most famous early book, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, James Bond was the prototype of British spies. And David just really put the kibosh on that forever.
Come on, old friend. It's bedtime.
His books and the movies which often followed are so chillingly familiar. Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, The Looking Glass War, A Small Town in Germany, Smiley's People, and A Perfect Spy. Escorting his readers through a world of deception and betrayal and loyalty and truth, the hallmarks of the human condition.
The world of espionage is what we all do in all of our lives. Spies employed by governments do it for governments, but we're all sort of committing little disloyalties all of the time, and David just writes these on a rather grand scale.
Le Carré, David Cornwell, was born in Britain and did not have a happy childhood. His mother died when he was 5. His father was a con artist. Cornwell was pretty much alone.
I think that storytelling is my element, and I had a childhood which drove me to a great extent into solitude, I suppose, and I compensated for life's defects by my own fantasy.
He came in mid-term without an interview.
There is much of le Carré in his books. He taught at England's most famous boarding school, Eton, which produced so much of the British establishment. He was a diplomat, and he worked for Her Majesty's Secret Service. In other words, he was a spy.
I've got a story to tell you. It's all about spies.
And how does he produce these layers upon layers of bone-chilling intrigue?
Writing's a lonely business, and I have a rich life to draw upon, and I suppose I use time present to revive the stimuli of time past.
And listen to his friend Willie Shawcross, himself a successful writer, who also has roots in Cornwall.
There's a lot of his writing there, pacing up and down the cliffs miles and miles at a time. And he's a bit like a sort of lighthouse keeper, alone on his cliff top.
And why is the newest novel, Russia House, so different? In the first place, he will actually be serialized in the Soviet Union, where once upon a time le Carré was called a Cold War provocateur. And in the book, he wrestles with the challenge of getting beyond the Cold War. David Cornwell is worried that anti-communism in the West has become so calcified that the West may refuse to help the Soviet Union out of the ice, as he puts it.
And I think that we've got to go for it. It isn't wimpish to do that. It's natural political courage. We have to find it.
And in his new book, the master tries to do his part. The spies really believe in a brave new world.
It would be wonderful if these overgrown, inflated services could finally be useful to us instead of to themselves.
And so we choose David Cornwell, John le Carré. Such a mixture of different people, such a mystery, such a storyteller.